Welcome to Biome. I'm your host and narrator, Alex Zubin. Wherever you are in the world, I'm so glad you're listening today. Biome is a brand new audio journal exploring the thin line between life and the unknown. We bring you immersive stories, whether they are of dying planets or thriving magical ecosystems. Beyond the stars and the spells, we are here to celebrate the strange, beautiful, and often terrifying reality of being alive. Our debut story is called Writing on the Wall by Jordan Hirsch. Jordan Hirsch writes speculative fiction and poetry in St. Paul, Minnesota. Her debut poetry chapbook, Both Worlds, is available with Bottlecap Press, and For Women of St. Paul, a collection of short stories, is out with Red Bird Chapbooks. Find out more at jordanhirsch.wordpress.com. You'll also see that in our show notes. If you love this story, please subscribe and help us grow this ecosystem. But now, let's live this story together. Praying for drought felt empty, but Ashiel did it anyway. He'd done so for nearly 12 years, but even the most devout of monks knew the gods rarely answered. "Head down," Master Koba chided him in a whisper, and Ashiel complied, smiling to himself. The only way his gray-haired mentor could have known his head hadn't been bowed was if his own eyes had been open. The prayer chime sounded one solitary time, and Ashiel squirmed. For 84 afternoons, the chimes had sounded, decreasing in number with each rain-free day. There were 85 chimes the day after a storm, 84 the next, then 83 all the way through months of drought, moon passing unimpeded through a cloudless sky. Finally, one more day until they reached 86 with no rain. No chime would sound, and the gods would finally give them another message. The monks exited the prayer room, acolytes extinguishing the flames. There was static among them. It had been nearly a century since the words from the gods had appeared on the walls, only a handful of times in the last 1,000 years that the monks had received new text. "Do you feel it?" Koba asked as they left the temple. "No clouds on the horizon yet. No change in air pressure." The monks were monitoring the weather even more faithfully than they already did, this impending hope sparking extra vigilance in everyone. Almost. "Yes, Master Koba," Ashiel replied. He did feel it. The anticipation, the fervor, the superstition. While he'd never say so to his mentor, Ashiel couldn't help but wonder if all this hubbub was justified. Gods that wrote on cliff walls on the 86th day of drought seemed far-fetched. Monks of all ages whirled around dining tables, swiping spoonfuls from bowls of grains, plucking ripe yellow fruits from their bundles, tearing handfuls from loaves of bread. "Eat your fill," Koba said as he scooped roasted yams into his bowl. "We have a big day ahead of us tomorrow." Ashiel didn't need to be told twice. On the mountain, he couldn't go hungry. That was the reason he'd come. Not community, not faith, not the gods. He'd been tired of being hungry, of his ribs poking out beneath the tunic. He'd made his way up the mountain when he was only 5, his mother dead from birthing him, and his father dead from illness. He'd survived on the streets nearly 2 months. The gnawing ache in his stomach had never relented, and the nights had been cold and getting colder. He'd heard other kids talk of the charity of the monks, had eaten bits of food they'd brought down to help the impoverished. Ashiel had tailed Master Koba back up the mountain after spotting him in the market, and the monks took him in without question. Chatter among the long tables was raucous. Laughter, debate, conflicting predictions. This was what the monks always did, but tonight they did so at greater volume. "Good news or bad?" a girl older than Ashiel asked. "It's time for good," a girl replied, swinging legs not long enough to touch the floor. The most recent messages have all been warnings. It's time for something positive. That's not how it works, an older acolyte said, and the young girl began to argue. The most recent messages have been helpful warnings, a boy cut in, which is a type of good news. Ashiel hid an eye roll. Dawn was parroting what Master Koba had said a few days ago in lessons. Koba took notice of this as well. An astute observation, Dawn, he said. But it rarely seems so when one is enduring the forewarned event, no matter the preparation. This hushed Dawn, and the acolytes around him giggled as soon as Master Koba's eyes were elsewhere. Ashiel didn't sleep well on night 85. He tossed and turned in the bunkhouse as he heard Koba doing the same nearby. Just like my mentor in some ways, at least, he thought. But when morning light broke, again not a cloud in the sky, Ashiel rose from his cot. Koba did not. Ashiel washed, but Koba remained resting. Master? He said, placing his hands on the blanketed shoulder. Bring the elders, Koba said, voice hoarse and slow. Ashiel waited outside the dormitory with the rest of the students, wondering what the elders could do for his mentor. What was wrong with this old man on a day he had been waiting for his whole long life, a day that was supposed to be joyous? Ashiel, the head elder said as he exited the sleeping quarters. Ashiel stepped forward, ready to care for Koba, whatever his needs. Master Koba has fallen ill and is unable to make the trek up the mountain. He has chosen you to go in his place. A murmur rippled through the crowd. While he was not Koba's youngest charge, he was nowhere near his most advanced. It was known in their temple that his devotion was measured. But why him and not another? Koba must be more feverish than he seemed. Ashiel was quickly given Koba's things: satchel, sheets of parchment, charcoal to write with, nourishment, and a filled water skin, but was given no time to think, no time to confer with his mentor. The group needed to get underway if they were going to arrive to the sacred place for the coming message. Single file, Ashiel in Koba's place, second from the end of the line, the elders made their way through the mountain pass. The sun beat on their backs, and sweat dripped from Ashiel's brow, leaving drops in the dust on the ground, on the path that had been traversed by every monk and acolyte in their temple numerous times. Today, though, was reserved for elders only, and now Ashiel. They reached the pinnacle of the carved steps, chiseled out by monks centuries ago, just before the sun reached its peak. The end of the path widened out into a chasm in the mountainside, orange-red rock shooting up vertically on three sides, creating a roofless chamber. Stones and logs had been moved for seating, so monks could sit and pray. Waiting, Ashiel reflected on their sacred texts, the messages that had appeared in the past on the cliff face, across from where they stood now, recorded each time by the devout. Promises of prosperity, warnings of conflict or natural disaster, all seemingly coming true in some form or another. Some prophecies were more detailed than others. Many could have multiple interpretations, having the monks and their students still debating hundreds of years later. To him, the vagueness of the words allowed anyone to read what they wanted. It was easy to look back and find events that fit the prophetic words, at least to some degree. Ashiel wondered what it would be today. The feeling in his gut told him it would be bad news. But it also told him that words from the gods couldn't really come so predictably with 86 days of drought. It began without warning. Shapes began to appear on the rust-red walls, glyphs in dark grays tinged with light greens and pale yellows. A chill shot down Ashiel's spine, bumps covering his arms and legs. The gods did have a message for them, and he was here to receive it. Him, an orphan boy who'd followed a monk up a mountain for a bite of bread. Some of the elders moved closer, parchment in hand to transcribe what they were seeing. Some simply fell to their knees. Self-conscious that he should be doing something, Ashiel traced the shapes as they came, some developing quickly, some painfully slowly. Master Palau would be noting the exact order they appeared, and the timings between them, always looking for extra meaning in the sequences. Master Keiko was the closest of all of them, nose nearly pressed to the rock, air writing stick capturing every single detail for later study. Master Tam hadn't written a thing, preoccupied instead with offering the gods endless gratitude for finally speaking. Ashiel didn't know his place in all this, but as a representative of Master Koba, one who devoted himself to the well-being and community of the monks, he tried to view this experience through that lens. He roughly sketched the glyphs for light, celebration, and scatter appearing closest to him. Could this mean plentiful crops to share in coming years? Or would the celebration be one of departure, a scattering to different locations away from the temple? He tried to imagine how Koba would explain this in one of his lessons. He came up with nothing. Ashiel moved closer. The shapes spreading across their granite canvas were still revealing themselves, and he had to get a better look. The grays and greens came into better focus, almost fuzz-like, with tiny blooms and petals, the bigger picture of the glyphs blurring into the pinpoints that comprised the whole. Ashiel's hand froze. He knew these blooms. He'd seen these before, or at least something very similar down near the stream that ran next to their temple. Lichen grew on the rocks there too. His stomach fell. This was just lichen on cliff walls, making peculiar shapes that looked like writing if one's mind tried hard enough, like trying to find shapes in clouds. Clouds that brought rain and ended the drought before 86 days passed. Ashiel looked around, face turning warm as if he'd walked in on one of the monks stealing fruit from the cart meant for the village. Had they known? It was the first time in any of their lives they'd seen this in person. Did none of the others realize what this was? Some organism that grew on cliff walls in dry conditions? Master Keiko was drawing every single bloom. Could they not see what Ashiel was seeing? They had to have. But he'd read nothing in the texts so far that would indicate that this was all some symbiotic fungus. Nothing had been mentioned in his lessons. Slowly, the revelation stopped, and the monks finished their notes. They gathered in groups of 2 and 3, then all joined together, laughing and animatedly postulating their initial interpretations. Ashiel remained silent, his parchment nearly blank. He stuffed it into his satchel as the group began their trek home. As they walked, Ashiel waffled between confusion and anger. He couldn't decide what was worse, the monks not knowing and being fooled by all this, or the monks knowing what the glyphs really were and still believing. How could they not know when it was plain as day? And how could they worship here, spending years poring over some growth lines on a rock wall? Back down the mountain, Ashiel kept to himself for a few hours, avoiding the stares and the questions of the younger acolytes. He skipped dinner, not wanting to navigate the bustle of it all. But as the moon rose and gray puffy clouds appeared on the horizon, Ashiel's eyes grew heavy, his body bearing how taxing the day and his troubled thoughts had actually been. He tiptoed back into the bunkhouse, not making a sound as he entered the sleeping quarters. He hadn't even pulled his blanket back when he heard a small voice. "Ashiel," Master Koba whispered to him, and he turned at once, wondering what the sick old man might need, feeling guilty for not checking on him sooner. He poured him a cup of water and offered it to his lips. Koba raised his head to take a few sips, then laid back down gently. "You saw it?" he asked, a smile on his wrinkled face. Ashiel wanted to tell Koba to get his rest, wanted to pretend he hadn't heard the old man so he could crawl into bed and find respite from his thoughts. But no, it was too late for that. His mentor's tired eyes were expectant. "Yes, Master Koba."
"Master Reita came by with dinner. He showed me his notes. What did you think?"
"It was..." Ashiel paused, looking for the right word. "Spectacular?"
"And did you write anything during the experience? Anything we'll be able to discuss together once I'm well again?"
Ashiel shook his head, and Koba nodded as if understanding.
"Too overwhelmed?"
"Something like that," Ashiel replied quietly. Koba's brow furrowed in the dim candlelight.
"Is something bothering you Ashiel, did you see something that portends trouble?
What could he say to that? Ultimately, the answer was yes. But could he share that with the man who had taken him in? Could he be honest that he'd seen through the illusion and that all they'd been studying was no better than algae growth on a stagnant pond? Master, Ashiel's voice was low and strained. It was lichen blooming, like what grows on the rocks by the wells. Koba smiled up at Ashiel, eyes gentle and knowing.
Of course it was.
Ashiel felt his world tilt for a moment. You knew?
Of course I knew. We all know. It's a species of lichen that grows in extreme drought.
Ashiel looked at his mentor in silence, unnerved by his matter-of-factness. But you taught me it was the gods speaking to us, giving us messages we need to hear.
It is.
But you just said it's growth on a rock. Ashiel glanced around, suddenly aware of those sleeping nearby.
Rock laced with the perfect amount of iron ore. Rock that is the perfect place for this particular lichen to grow after 86 days without rain.
Master, Ashiel paused. Then it is just botany, he said, his eyes falling to his shoes. He'd tracked dust into their dormitory.
Have I taught you nothing?
Koba asked, no harshness in his voice.
The gods can use whatever vessel they choose to speak, to bless, to care for their people. The wind, the sun, the rain, lichen.
Koba's voice had a smile in it.
Even a young boy who's only ever wanted a full belly and a warm place to sleep.
Ashiel jerked his gaze back, meeting Koba's as his cheeks reddened.
I was young and hungry once, too, if you can believe it.
So Koba had known it was lichen, and he still believed, truly, that the gods' words for them were on that cliff wall. Koba had known Ashiel had had questions, had maybe even had doubts of his own, it seemed. He'd not always been the devout monk that lay before Ashiel now. It doesn't make it less sacred, knowing how it works? Ashiel asked.
Not for me, it doesn't. The gods shape those growths, just as they shape each of us.
Ashiel nodded, not fully convinced, but content for now, a wave of tiredness coming over him again.
So,
Koba said, shifting deeper into his cot.
What do you think the gods were writing to us this time?
I love that this story is built around a question, a mystery of how and why messages from gods should appear after precisely 86 days of drought. As readers, we start off in the same mental and perhaps spiritual place as Ashiel. We wonder how the miracle happens, but we also doubt it's completely real. We live rational lives in which we expect straightforward explanations for every experience, and that just makes sense. We go through our days believing that every mystery has an answer, and for the most part that seems to be true. In this story, Ashiel gets to experience the mystery and the miracle for himself, and he gets to do it through a wonderful subversion of science fiction and speculative fiction in general. I feel like overall there tends to be in this genre an undercurrent of a powerful them who does not want the hero or heroine to discover the truth and who throws obstacles in their path to prevent them from discovering powerful secrets. I feel that as science fiction has trickled out into broader culture, so too have the tropes of shadowy powers that withhold secret knowledge. But in this story, Koba actually picks Ashiel himself and encourages Ashiel to go on his behalf. I feel that this is such a wonderful choice on the part of the author, because in a sense this reflects our lived experience much more faithfully. At work and in our personal lives, we are constantly thrust into new and mysterious circumstances, although these are usually more mundane events like discovering how to fix a broken appliance or figure out part of a difficult project for the boss. Now, I don't know about you, but the discovery that a lichen is behind the messages from the gods did not disappoint me as much as it seems to have disappointed Achille. He is disappointed that there is a real, physical phenomenon behind the appearance of the lichen, and he interprets that to mean that no real miracle took place at all. By contrast, Koba is delighted that Achille saw the lichen appear. He embodies the idea that Dostoevsky writes about in The Brothers Karamazov, that faith does not spring from the miracle, but that miracles spring from faith. To Koba, the miracle is no less amazing for the fact that it is based in a natural process. Moreover, he does not need the miracle to justify his faith, but rather, his faith imbues the appearance of the lichen with meaning. So, what did you think of this story? Email me at biomespec@gmail.com. You can also find the email address in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. If you haven't done so already, remember to follow Biome so you can get each story as soon as it drops. Thank you for listening to Biome with me, your host and narrator, Alex Zubin. Until next time, farewell wherever the days take you.